everyone, 'tis I, Julian Greystoke. I am wearing my Commodore 64 shirt today. Nigel is here and I've got my glass of water with my straw because I'm filming a lot of videos today and my voice is already tired. By the way, something fun my friend and I like to do is when we pick a straw out of the pack, whatever color the stripes are is whatever Hogwarts house you're in. And I just picked a green one, which is perfect because Slytherin, baby. And I feel like that is pretty perfect for today's video. Today I am doing an idea that I totally stole from another booktuber, and I can't remember who. If I do figure out who I stole it from, I'll link them down below. But this is just going over some of the series that I have read and picking my least favorite book from them. I am going with series that I have read in their entirety or have at least read up until the latest book that has come out. Some of these are series I loved, some of these are series I was less impressed with. As I was looking through my Goodreads for this, I was really surprised how many series I have actually completed, because it feels like I'm always starting series and just being disappointed and not continuing, so that's pretty exciting. Let's get right down to it. Let's talk about the book I liked least in some of these series that I have read. The first one, of course, is Harry Potter. Harry Potter, a plethora of books to love or hate. I have grown fairly ambivalent about the Harry Potter books as an adult. I think they were great to read when I was younger, but I'm not quite as in the fandom or obsessed with them as a lot of adults that I know still are. And there are several books that I just don't even really remember what happened in them at all. So I picked the one that I don't remember what happened in this book, to be honest with you, and that is the Order of the Phoenix. I could not tell you a single thing that happened in Order of the Phoenix. Is that the one where Dumbledore died? I don't even know. That's how little I remember about the later Harry Potter books. I can remember the first ones, I think because I read them more, but as I became an adult along with the Harry Potter books, I usually only read them once when they came out and not again. I also have Cursed Child as a dishonorable mention here, because of all the books in the Harry Potter series and also books, that one was terrible and I hated it. It was so bad I DNF'd it. I could not. Next up, we have The Hunger Games. I still really enjoy the Hunger Games series. I did a reread not too long ago just because I felt like it. But I will tell you that during my reread, I only reread the first 2 books, so you can guess which one's my least favorite. If you guessed the third one, Mockingjay, you are correct. Ding, 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 ding. You don't win anything. It was really easy to guess. Mockingjay just wasn't my thing. I think that that author does a lot better with a game type of world where she can just make up anything that can happen and it doesn't need to make sense. And once we kind of got into completely the real world in Mockingjay, stuff started happening and I needed it to make sense. I was like, what? Why is this happening? How does this work? What's going on? Where's the logic? Because once you get out into the real world, things need to make sense. Things can just happen in a game, in an arena, but they need to make sense in real life, in my opinion. And that, I think, was the hardest pill for me to swallow in that book. The next series is the His Fair Assassin series, which is sort of 3 companion books about assassin nuns, which I will tell you right now, I love. I love female assassin stories, especially if the assassins actually kill people, which they do in these books. But which one was my least favorite? That is going to have to easily go to Mortal Heart, which is the final book in the series. The first 2, especially the second one, really drew me in with the characters and the story, and Mortal Heart just kind of tripped over itself and completely failed on all accounts. I didn't relate with the main character. I thought her love story was poorly done. By the way, I do have reviews of all 3 books in this series. If I remember, I'll link them in the doobly-doo, but feel free to wander around my channel. I have a ton of book reviews, and I have reviewed a lot of the books that I'm going to be talking about, so if you're curious why I didn't like this one as much, you can definitely check out that review for more in-depth thoughts. Next up, we have the Birthmarked series, which is about a girl in a dystopian type of future. and she is a midwife, or she was in training to be a midwife, and it's just her adventures. In the first one, she gets kicked out of the city that she lives in, and the second one, she finds a new settlement to be with, and in the third one, she takes that new settlement and goes back to the original city. There's a lot going on, but there are some things that I just did not resonate with, and most of them happened. In the second book, Prized really fell flat for me. The character felt not necessarily out of character, but her most annoying and frustrating. She had so many love interests. It was like this, every single boy wanted to be with her, and it was kind of explained in the story, but not really, and of course she would never ever pick one because, oh, I love them all. Who will I choose? And I just wanted to smack her. Next up, we have a book series that I love, and that is the Becca Cooper series by Tamara Pierce. If you have not read it, please, please, please go read it. If you like fantasy at all, go read the Becca Cooper series. I firmly believe that it is Pierce's best work. But if I had to, if I was forced to pick my least favorite from that series, and they are all really great, I would have to go with Terrier, which is the first book. Not because it is bad in any way, I still love it, but just because these books became steadily better as they went on. And Mastiff, I reread it recently, and it just spoke to my soul. I loved it so much. Because they just get better as they go, the weakest one is the first one. The next series is the Rust series, which is a series of graphic novels that you should definitely check out, especially if you love robot stories, and especially if you love stories that are not heavy on the dialogue. I get sick of graphic novels that are really dense with dialogue, because then I'm like, why is this a graphic novel? If I'm just going to be reading it, and most of the panels are taken up with word bubbles, then why isn't it just a regular book? So I love graphic novels that use the visuals to convey the story, and the Rust series did that. But which one was the weakest? Well, I read the first 3 books, and then I had to wait for the 4th one to come out. And so I built up that hype, because it was going to be awesome. The culmination of these 3 great starting books, and then the 4th one came out, and it was really quite disappointing. It felt very quick. I was expecting, I think it's even thinner than some of the other books. I was expecting something really great, and instead it seemed to rush to get to the ending and be done. And it almost feels like the author was like sick of it and wanted it to be over so he could move on to something else or something. And so unfortunately, Soul in the Machine, which is the 4th book in this series, was the most disappointing one for me. Let's talk about the Newsflesh trilogy, which is a trilogy of zombie books about this apocalyptic future with zombies, of course, where our main characters are news reporters. They have their own news website, and it's not only about zombies and how people are dealing with zombies just being a part of their world long after the first infection happened, but also with how the news has changed, how we get our news, and how that has changed in this zombie future. And I really loved that idea. I may be the only person who was 100% there for like how they do the news now in the zombie future, because I feel like the author was bored with even that as they strayed further and further away from it until they got to Blackout, which is the final book and my least favorite of this series. It strayed so far from what the first book was. It felt really contrived. There were plot elements and a romance that I hated. It felt very meandering and not planned at all. Like the author did not plan these books out to be a series. She just kind of wrote them. So I have to say that I was very disappointed in that book. What about the Shades of Magic series? Again, I have reviews for all of these bad boys. The series beginning with A Darker Shade of Magic, they're by V.E. Schwab, and I enjoyed A Darker Shade of Magic. However, I was less and less impressed with them as they went on. But the final book was not my least favorite. That Prize goes to Gathering of Shadows, which is the second book in the trilogy, and I hated it. I just thought it was the worst. It was so pointless. It could have been removed and been fine. There were like 4 chapters that were necessary to understand the story in the future book. There was like a character that was introduced that we could have easily introduced in the final book. It felt like a holding pattern of the worst kind. It felt like the author was just told, we want a trilogy and so you need a second book, and she had no idea what to do with the second book, and so she just did whatever. And finally, one of my favorite series of all time are the Redwall books. They were one of my favorite series growing up, and I still love them. I greatly admire the author Brian Jacques. If you have not read them, they are a series of companion books about a place called Redwall. Of course, there's a much larger world around it, and it gets expanded in every story. But it is all about these anthropomorphic creatures that wield swords and engage in giant pitched battles, and there are amazing bad guys and amazing heroes, and I really recommend it if you love swashbuckling, if you love fighting, if you want a sort of middle grade young adult book that doesn't shy away from things like death. Then definitely check out the Redwall series. Highly recommended. And Brian's writing is so good and so visual. But anyway, this is a huge series, and it was difficult to pick out a book that I didn't like. There were a few that disappointed me, definitely. There are a lot. He's not going to have all winners. But the one that I went with is Loam Hedge because it was honestly the most boring. Ryan's books usually have a lot of adventure, a lot of fighting and swashbuckling and good guys versus bad guys and all kinds of stuff going on and war and puzzles to solve. And this one was really slow and boring and not much was going on, and I just didn't feel it. And so that's why it is my least favorite of that series. So there you go. That was just this impromptu video. That was books in a series that were my least favorite. If you guys want to hear something like books in series that were my favorite in that series, comment below and let me know. And I have a lot of content here on my channel, so if you're new, feel free to wander around and check it all out. I do post new videos Mondays and Fridays. All the links to my social media are in the doobly-doo. And if you want to get special content from me, go over and support me on Patreon at any level to get special videos and other content. Plus, all of your donations are going towards getting me better equipment, so that's a plus for both of us. And I will see you again next time with whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Bye!
Hey everyone, it is shout out time. Time to shout out to my patrons, Amanda, Ashley, Kim, Lisa, Ramona, Sabby Panda, and Sarah. If you want to be great like these amazing people, then become my patron over on Patreon.